let's go ahead and begin things with a video from Daily Dose of Wisdom. I'm not gonna lie, I think my biggest problem with this channel is that the entire purpose of it... How's it going, Cooney? The entire purpose of it seems to be to play some bit of Christian propaganda and then just smile and nod with it, and then rack up like 330,000 subscribers. I'm not gonna lie, I wish that I could be this lazy with my content, but I can't, so we're just gonna go ahead and get ready to play that video.
The clip you're about to watch features a conversation between William Lane Craig and someone who's at one of his events in the Q&A line. This particular person used to be a Christian, is now an atheist, and they are asking him, why is it that the evidence that you're presenting to me doesn't ring true? Why is it that I'm not convinced? In a sense, what am I missing is the question. It reveals something very, very interesting about not only human nature, but about how spiritual revelation, spiritual insight, spiritual learning takes place in the first place. Let's go ahead and dive into this clip, and then I'll
How's it
get
going,
into
Bob?
some of that on the back end.
Bob got no
I just want
job.
to say thank you, Dr. Craig, for showing up here. You are a part of my weekly podcast listening, you and Kevin, along with your Defenders podcast. I listen
Really?
to every once. Yes.
Wow.
I like to mix things up a little bit. I have to say that I've been a apostate for about 5 years now, and one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, so you've presented a lot of evidence tonight for the historicity of the resurrection of Jesus. Now, I don't know if that you expect that to go in the needle to peg it all the way to 100. I doubt that you do. But there are obviously people that don't accept it as compelling.
As what?
I mean, yeah, because we don't actually have a lot of historicity for the resurrection. We sure do have some historicity for a guy named Jesus. We certainly do have historicity for the cult of Christus. We certainly have a whole lot of individual disparate things, but we don't have accounts of a guy coming back to life outside of the Bible, outside of claims that, other people saying like, hey, we talked to people who said they saw him. I talk to people all the time who say they see all kinds of weird things. I don't know what drugs they're doing.
As compelling, myself included, and I don't mean that necessarily in the philosophical sense, but just
Okay, good. Yeah, because I'm not claiming it's compelling in the philosophical sense.
right. But compelling in that.
Yeah,
it just
persuasive.
doesn't swing it over from the 50% plus a feather kind of thing to tip me over the edge. So I would ask you, from the heart, what am I missing? What am I missing? What am I not getting? And
Well,
I'm not.
gosh, isn't that a question I should ask you?
That's probably true.
I mean,
no, not really. So if you're the one explaining everything, right, from the top to the bottom, you're the one who's supposed to be the expert on this, and you've presented everything to somebody and they go, well, I'm not convinced. If there is information that you are withholding for any reason, any way, shape, or form, then that information may be the stuff that compels somebody. It may be the stuff that tips somebody over that edge. Not always, but oftentimes, especially when you're the presenter in control of the flow of information. Now, when somebody's asking you, like, hey, what am I not getting? As opposed to going, well, I need to be asking you that question. No. Maybe take some time to reevaluate yourself. The thing with William Lane Craig, and the thing that most people who I'm on the side of on YouTube, who've done critiques on his content, the thing that William Lane Craig is an expert at doing is preaching to the choir, but doing so in a way that sounds like he's trying to speak to atheists. If you disagree with that assessment of his content, of the way that he presents himself, then please let me know in the comment section below. But from my perspective, every time that I try to watch anything from William Lane Craig, I find it thoroughly unconvincing. It's only friends of mine who are Christian who hold anything he says in high regard, which typically is indicative of somebody who is speaking very much for those Christians and not for the people that he's supposed to be leading down the path of righteousness or whatever.
You would
I'm
be
not
the
up
one
there.
who would know.
They don't want to hear that. But I'm not the only one. I'm not the only
Yeah.
one. I guess maybe maybe what are we? What are people not getting? Why isn't that enough?
I mean, I think here, this gets into, again, all kinds of psychological and emotional factors.
Sure.
Yeah, and maybe explaining some of those would help.
A person who has done what you've done, once been a Christian and now apostatized, that's such an emotional commitment and change of direction.
Just slightly.
That to reverse course and go back again is going to be, I think, really difficult and would take something very powerful. And I'm very...
It really shouldn't, though, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're on the side of the all-powerful deity, right? Like, that should not be outside of his power. That should not be an unreasonable thing. People should be very easily swayed by your god, because your god is a tri-omni god. It feels strange to me anytime somebody has this whole, like, it's going to be hard to convert them. But why? Why should it ever be hard to convert somebody? Why ever should it be hard to convert somebody to any religion where your god is professed to be as powerful as they are? Is converting somebody to that religion outside of that god's power? If he does not want people to be converted via his power, then what reasons would he have? And I know there's going to be Christians in my comment section who are going to immediately come and play with the, well, that's what free will is for. But not really. But look, if you're going to have a tri-omni god, then he's omniscient, right? Then your god knows what I'm going to do on Tuesday. I don't really have much of a choice on what I'm going to do on Tuesday. I get this lovely illusion of free will, but for pragmatic reasons, an illusion of free will and actual free will are basically the same thing.
Encouraged and glad that you're here tonight and that you're listening to these podcasts. I think that's wonderful. But it may just be that you may have a lot of emotional baggage and psychological things to work through that are preventing you from being persuaded by the evidence.
All you have to do is get therapy, and then you'll be a good Christian. I would not find that to be very compelling.
But I think the evidence itself speaks for itself. It's not philosophically compelling, as you say, but I do think it's good enough to ground faith rationally, especially when you combine it with the arguments for God's existence. You know, like cosmological, teleological, moral arguments.
All kinds of evidence. Evidence? I tried to say arguments and evidence at the same time. It came out as evidence. 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 I don't like that. I don't like that word. I don't like those things that came out of my mouth. So I've actually done a lot of older content on teleological arguments, cosmological arguments, of why I don't find most of those very, very compelling. So I'm not going to get into that right here, but simply saying, like, there are all these arguments for a god. That's not really compelling, because I can present arguments for anything. Whether or not those arguments are compelling is separate to their existence. I can give you an argument for why the sun is actually turquoise blue. It may not be a good argument, but it will be an argument that I will try to ground in a way that will hopefully be somewhat convincing. And I don't know, depending on how hard you are, it might be.
The cumulative
Also, Nixie Chan, thank you for redeeming your points for... you fucking degen.
case for Christianity, I think, is impressive. It's like in a court of law where there may not be any single piece of evidence that convicts the accused as guilty, but it will be the cumulative force of the evidence, 20% from the
So this is basically him agreeing that there is no such thing as a smoking gun argument for God. That's a huge admittance, by the way.
cosmological argument, 30% from the teleological argument, 15% from the resurrection of Jesus, say. And even though none of those is over 50%, the cumulative force of the evidence can be such that it does provide a case that is compelling in the sense that you're well within your rational rights to embrace this.
But remember, well within your rational rights to embrace something doesn't make something right. It doesn't make something true. Let me give you an example, all right? So let's say for a minute that you happen to be listening to a case about a guy who committed murder, right? And you're trying to find the murderer. You don't have a smoking gun. You don't have the weapon on hand. You have none of that. But what you have is the information that at 12 o'clock on a Sunday, in that hotel room, there was a person with blonde hair, green eyes, and was a bit overweight, potentially 220 pounds. Now, you know that at this time, there was a DoorDash delivery, there was a postage delivery, and there was a mysterious person who went in and left. None of these three people ended up covered in blood or anything like that. Each of these people, around the time of 12 o'clock, which is around the time of the murder, each of these people have had some time where they have interacted with someone in that room. But each of them walked in and walked out. All of them fit the description. Are you to assume that it's necessarily the last person there? Well, no, not really. Because I've omitted information. The information that I've omitted is that before 1 o'clock chimed, there was another person who entered. An actual thief who had the exact same descriptions as everybody. Merely by presenting evidence, I can make you think one thing or another. I can make you think that, oh, the postman did it because he was the last person there and nobody else came in and left trying to call the police or anything, so it must necessarily be that last one. Or there's another thing that could have happened. It could have been none of these people, and each one of them could have been a person who went into the room, did not see the woman there, and left. Because once again, I've omitted information. She was dead in the bathroom, and nobody was going to go into the goddamn bathroom. All I have to do is omit particular pieces of information, and I can make you believe that it is one person or another. It's a very easy thing to do. It's why I do not find, oh, well, look, I have this compelling argument for a god. That is not enough to make me believe that your god is real, and it probably never will be. Because all it takes is framing an argument in a certain way, and it will become more or less compelling. If I give you this scenario where there are 4 possible killers, but I omit the fact that there's a 4th killer, or there's a 4th possible killer, then you will never have that information, and you'll make a decision based off incomplete data. If all of these people entered in, but I omit the fact that none of them actually saw the woman, and it was the 4th person who went in, knocked on the door for the bathroom, and found that there was no response, and then called 911, suddenly that last person isn't the killer anymore. Suddenly that last person is the whistleblower, and the killer must necessarily be one of the 3 people from before, or a person from before that I also omitted. It doesn't matter how the argument is presented. If there is information missing, and there always will be when it comes to a triomni god, it does not matter how that argument is presented. The data will always be incomplete. Therefore, the conclusions will always be in question.
Whatever it was that led you to walk away from it in the beginning, maybe what you come back to won't involve some of those same offensive elements that troubled you. Maybe the Christianity you come back to will be a somewhat different shape that won't involve maybe, I'm just guessing, an abusive church situation or wooden fundamentalism or whatever it might be.
2 no true Scotsmans. The wrong type of Christian. Argument presented twice. Once in church and the other in body. Isn't that great? When you do the whole it must have been a too fundamentalist church for you. Well, no, not necessarily. That doesn't change a lot of people when they decide whether or not God real or God not real. That just changes which church they're going to go to or how comfortable they're going to be at a church. Arianda, thank you for resubscribing.
I want to invite you to come back to what C.S. Lewis called mere Christianity.
Oh, I know, yeah. Well, thank you for the work you've done, and I really appreciate you coming out tonight. So.
There's a band.
Bog Got No Jod says, you're an atheist, I'm out of here. Later. See ya. I'm glad that my religious affiliation was enough to make you go, nope, I'm out of here. This channel bad. See ya, buddy. Mind, there are plenty of Christians in my audience, and nothing I've said here has been disparaging towards Christians, or really any religion. Merely saying something is not enough evidence to convince you, and talking about the reasons why that is not convincing should not be insulting. Unless, of course, you wrap your entire identity into your religion so hard that it's the only thing that defines you, and anybody that goes against it in any way, shape, or form actually attacks your identity in doing so because you haven't formed one of your own. Or that, you know. Just throwing that one out there. I'm not saying it could be that one. I'm just throwing that out as a possibility. Might have omitted some data. Who knows?
Called Dawes that has a song lyric that says, the bigger the telescope, the brighter the stars. And that gets at this idea that the actual thing that you're seeing through plays a role in your ability to see. What do you see? How much of it do you see, right? Christ also talks about this idea.
Okay, so I actually have to agree with him on this one. And I'm a little happy that this is some of the content he's doing on his own and not just nodding and smiling at William Lane Craig. That one feels a little weird. But he is right. If you're only allowing yourself to intake a certain part of the data, not getting the entirety of the data in any scenario will change the argument that you end up leaning towards. So, as an example, like I gave before, when we're talking about that whodunit situation, by me omitting certain parts of the data, you will never have an accurate idea of who did what. So, like he says, a larger telescope increases your chance of possibilities. It makes the stars brighter. It makes it easier to understand all of the data that is being presented to you. Which is exactly why my argument is that there's always incomplete data, and that makes things sus.
Of people who have ears to hear, people who have eyes to see. The implication being that there are also people who don't. So the lens that you're looking through impacts your ability to see reality itself. And so that being said, though, I love this guy's honesty. I don't really think that he's trolling in the same way that I do, often see even in the comments of these videos. I actually think that he's being relatively genuine, and he's saying, like,
I wonder what he would think I'm doing on my videos. Like, I'm actually genuinely curious if this guy would think I'm trolling or if I'm, being genuine. I'm very curious when it comes to stuff like this.
Why can't I see the stars that you can see? What's wrong with my lens? What's wrong with my telescope? I think that's a fantastic question to ask. The Bible literally does deal with the same point as well, where it says, Jeremiah 29:13 says, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. So
I don't like this argument, because this argument puts the onus on every individual person who fell away from their faith. Every person who stopped being a Christian for any amount of time, it's necessarily their fault. It can never be, in this framing, it can never be the fault of, again, the tri-omni God, whose power it should be within to keep people within the faith, to provide enough evidence for people who want to maintain their faith. I have very, very rarely met ex-Christians who became ex-Christians because they wanted to be. Most of the time when I encounter ex-Christians, myself included, they became ex-Christians because, despite the evidence that they were presented with, they fell away. There was never a concerted effort to break themselves of their religiosity. There was never a moment where they decided they didn't want to be religious, so they weren't, because belief doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. You don't really get to control your beliefs. I've used this argument before, but I'll use it again. If you really think you can control your beliefs, then do me a favor and believe Australia doesn't exist. And when you fail, you'll understand the difference between you and a flat earther very, very quickly. At the end of the day, throwing the onus on the believer takes away from the power that your God is supposed to have. And if your God is supposed to want people to believe in him, then that should just happen. If let me do a little bit of philosophy for you guys, a little bit of fun, brain-breaking philosophy. You know the whole, can God make a burrito so hot he can eat it? Can God make a boulder so big he can't roll it? That whole scenario, we're going to play with that for a minute. I don't find those arguments for God very, very convincing, or arguments against God very convincing. But I will say that there is a fun one here. Can a being who is omnipotent and omniscient, so they know everything and everything is within their power, can that being have desires? Now, let me go ahead and define a desire real quick. A desire is something that you want, but have not yet achieved. Or you have achieved and you want to achieve it again. It's simply a thing that you want to transpire. Now, for you and I, if there's something I want, let's say I want $1 million. The reason I can't get $1 million is because my fan base isn't large enough. If I had 1 million subs and everybody gave me $1, I'd have $1 million. That's not saying I would have deserved that $1 million at that point. I simply wouldn't. But the only thing between me and $1 million is all of the logistics. The amount of people who are subscribed to my channel, the amount of people subscribed to my Patreon, the amount of expertise I have in any one job that I might take to supplant what I have on my channel, the ability I have to save that money. All of these things are in the way of me making $1 million. But if I was omnipotent, none of those things would be in my way because they would all be within my power. And if I was omniscient, then I would know how to navigate every single one of those scenarios. Wanting $1 million would manifest the $1 million. The mere want of an omnipotent, omniscient being must manifest whatever they want. Because if it didn't, then there is something in the way of that. And if something is in the way of an omnipotent being, then they are not omnipotent. So, if God desires somebody to be a Christian, then they will simply be a Christian if he is omnipotent and omniscient. Because he not only knows how to convert them to Christianity, but it is within his power to do so. The only argument is that there is a conflicting desire. The argument would go, yes, God wants people to be Christian, but he wants them to have free will more. Said, what if it's free will stopping them? That is the usual argument, saying that it's free will that is stopping somebody because he wants people to have free will more. But then you have to ask the question, to what end? If God is omniscient and he knows that your free will directly lead to you going to hell, then his want for your free will is directly tied to his want for you to burn in hell. Again, he's omniscient, so he knows exactly where this is going. There is not a world in which he doesn't know your destination in this particular thought experiment, or just per the Bible. So you have a God with two conflicting desires. His want for you to go to heaven and his want for you to have free will. But his want for you to have free will is automatically tied to burning in hell. So that just defaults to his want for you to go to heaven versus his want for you to go to hell. Now, why would a God want for you to go to hell? And if these two ideas are in conflict with that God, are they worth worshiping? Moreover, why does one of these wants win out over the other for random-ass people? This is why I don't think the free will argument works very well, because I don't think within the triomni God, free will can exist.
But that's that idea of the lens. There's something in the heart of this individual in the clip that is not open to actual encounter, actual revelation with God.
Again, this is just throwing all of the blame on the individual. Ah, you are not saved properly. You must be broken. It's a you problem to solve. Not me or God's, apparently.
And so he's not really finding God. So it's not just intellectual. It's not just a matter of fact. It is also a matter of feeling. It is also a matter of spiritual openness to God himself. Lastly, John 20:29, Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you've seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." And
so I don't like this one at all. So here's the thing. Human beings, our cognition, our way we structure belief, is based off something that within the Christian mythos, Jesus created, God created. God created the pattern-seeking, pattern recognition settings of our brain. The part of our brain that sees something and then puts it into the category of belief, that is something that God manifested, according to Christian mythos. This means that Jesus wants you to go exactly against his design. He wants you to go against the design he created in order to get the special keys to the kingdom that allow you to go to heaven.
So there's this is really getting at this idea of faith. Come with openness, come with eyes to see, come with ears to hear. Pray that God will give you those things if you don't have them.
It sounds like this guy had all of that, though.
Pray that God will help you work through whatever type of trauma or pain you might be dealing with. He's the great physician. He's fully capable of healing. He's actually a genius at healing people, and he can do it. And so come to God with prayer, with openness. Ask him to show you his glory. Ask him to give you a bigger telescope so that you can see how bright the stars really are.
I'm sure, literally every atheist who has stepped away from their religion, if it was a Christian religion, everyone has done this. I'm like 99% certain everybody who has fallen away from faith has had some moment where they were distressed because they wanted God to give them a reason to stay in the faith. And then somehow the Triomni God failed them. This conversation gets even more complicated when you talk about the pagans. They literally just built a better God. Anywho, let me know what you think in the comment section below, though. I do have fun returning to atheist content, and it's a nice break from some of the more pertinent issues going on right now. As always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions that are going to be coming up here in a little bit, and insert into video tagline here. Hey there, thank you for making it to the end of the video. I think it's probably a good idea to go ahead and talk about fan art before we get into the credits, though, so we can celebrate the artists who honestly make this channel run in more ways than you guys could possibly know. The first one we have here is from Strawberry Vanilla. Say this is the first time I've tried to do fan art, and I hope you all like it. Let me see if I can read this. And use coupon code Suris for 10% off at DDLG Playground. Now go fuck yourself with something nice. Jeebus. I'm surprised they still sponsor me. The next one we have here is from Fritzcraft, and this is... I'm assuming I think I know what this is. Yeah. Yeah. We're making a net going, I guess. Because of course we are. Why wouldn't we be? Why wouldn't we be? The next one we have here... Hold on, that is not the right one. The one that I had up decided it didn't want to be there. There we go. There we go. This one is from Shady Shion. It said, am in retrograde minis and my pixel art program's making mechs because Armored Core 6 does not release till Friday, and I need to sate my mech customization addiction now. So I ended up making the Ara-Aranator. Jeebus. As always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and roll right into the end of the video. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability a Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Britzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.